I might have killed everyone in here's audio. It sounds like. Naga, why not just like who cares about the people who aren't in this room? We have more people in this room than we have watching on YouTube, so I just go ahead and start telling us your biography while people take a look at the YouTube channel and see if they can hear you.
All right, let's roll with it. Oh, they're saying it's working. Sweet, great,
wonderful.
I love how it's completely unclear what the solution was. It seems like, but
I just clicked a bunch of buttons on my OBS.
That was my strategy, getting it working on my end too. So apparently, we got the right combo. My background, I've been working for Curve, kind of through their grants program for. God, it's almost been like 2 years now, which is like shocking, actually. Before that, I did neuroscience research. I was a postdoc doing research that around the time DeFi summer and whatnot came around, and toy around making like on local bitcoins back in the day, making market makers.
Nice.
Market making. In fact, it was great because it was like just so noisy and there's such big spreads. It's pretty easy to make some money. And honestly, my system was I just had an Excel spreadsheet and I would recompute a standard deviation every day and then kind of price based on standard deviations from the mean, which like worked pretty well. But then one day, like the Bitcoin price doubled, and like I was just completely off sides, and that was my first experience of like impermanent loss. uh,
Have you held since then?
I
Because
don't
the
know.
price might get back into your range the way we're going.
Yeah. No, I successfully sold top back in November 2018 or 2019. I sell top, and my signal was that my father-in-law called me and was like, "Did you see Bitcoins on TV?" And I was like, "This can't be real." And I even thought the price was an error, so I was like, "Okay, I got to sell this quick and like get that money and get the money off the exchange before they try and claw it back."
Well done.
But yeah, I mean that was the one time I did well. Since then, it's been hit or miss.
Nice. So
Anyways,
basic.
I think.
So with your spreadsheet, you're
Go
just
ahead.
trying to do all the stuff that's happening with Curve V2 pools, basically, right? Calculating profits.
Yeah.
And then Mitch
Yeah,
put you out of
it
work.
was like a really bad version. Well, that was many years later. I think that yeah, I just held and forgot about it, which like people say thinking about it is the best trade, which is true for me actually. But I kind of forgot about it until I don't even know how I came across the Curve V1 white paper. Like I was dating this girl and she told me about like she's like, "Oh yeah, I'm getting like like some absurd percentage." And I think she was in one of those CFI things that probably died recently. Oh, actually, this I saw the Curve V1 white paper. I was like, "Oh, this is pretty nice. Actually, this solves a lot of problems that I'd experienced before by being a noob." And also, to me, it was the dream. I was like, "Oh my god, they actually did it. Like we've got like computer programs running on." Sucked me in.
Nice, nice. So I wanted to get back to one thing you said. You said you were a postdoc in neuroscience. Are you still doing anything related to neuroscience, or has like DeFi again claimed a great scientist to focus on like building Ponzi schemes?
No, I'm full time DeFi. Like I get paid from the Curve DAO, and I don't have time to do anything else. Every once in a while, come up with some experiment idea or whatever, but I just jot it down or I try and like pawn it off to one of my students or whatever, be like, "Hey, I got an idea, you should do this." But they never do it. They have their own interests.
Okay, so this seems really bad for humanity if everyone's abandoning like some of these disciplines that actually like make the world a better place.
I don't know if like it's arguable how much like I kind of think science is broken. Like it itself is kind of a Ponzi. But
Ponzi. I've never heard Ponzi used to
I,
describe science.
You never heard that? Well, there's a
I,
few papers where people describe this. Basically, there's not enough professor positions for all the PhDs that we mint every year. So it's kind of essentially the PhD machine is a Ponzi.
that I can definitely believe. I can believe there's not enough positions, but you could still escape academia and get like lucrative funding, like creating misleading studies for companies, right? Like,
That's right. That's still wide open and I think quite lucrative.
okay, more lucrative than DeFi. Like, how far does crypto have to drop in order for everyone who's in DeFi to go back to their like PhD positions?
I guess it depends on how well you can milk some DAO. You have to trick some DAO into paying you instead of tricking like NIH or whatever.
Well, I don't think you've tricked the Curve DAO. From my observation, and it's a party, so people here should feel free to chime in. The work that you do in terms of like keeping track of all the Curve parameters and tuning them, like I think you're probably making all of us way more money just through like that diligence right there.
I think in some cases, yeah, like that. I'm happy that there's only been like a couple mistakes, but like even just the pool alone, like the first one really focused on tuning right, because it was the biggest, of course. And I don't know that we first ran the simulator, and I think like all of our minds were blown. It was suggesting to do 2,000 for A, and we're like, that was way out of the realm of anything that had been done before. And so we did our due diligence, really thought it through, and then I think Mitch made a proposal to ramp it up to 2,000. And I think that alone actually made everyone a lot of money. So I was pretty happy with that.
Nice, that's what we like to hear. And it's been gone as high as 5,000, right?
Yeah, so we had it up at 5,000, but what we realized was that basically in bear market, the tether price will tend towards the redemption price. So there's a slight fee for redeeming, and we found that if you at 5,000, like that redemption price was a little bit outside of the deep liquidity zone. So we actually looked through we looked through A parameters and kind of found, okay, assuming tether would be at that price, what's the best A parameter? And we found that about 2,000 ended up being the best one. So we moved it back there.
Got it. And then how's that relate to Uniswap is doing like 0.1% fee or something?
Yeah, that's right. So, well, that actually was what drove us to consider bringing the three pool fee down to one basis point. And at first, I thought that it wouldn't. The simulation kind of suggested it wouldn't be worth it, right? So if you divide the fee by four, that means you have to have four times the volume to make up for it to keep the same amount of money, right? And whenever I ran it, it didn't really look like that would happen. But someone had an idea. I think it was Benny. Yeah, Benny had the idea to look at, well, how does it affect the entire ecosystem? So I was able to kind of like cobble together a simulation where we had not just three pool, but also all the meta pools, and see how changing the fee would affect returns across all those pools. And it turned out to be pretty good. Like we found that basically, in fact, we could even lower the fee lower, and we would still, it seems like, probably make more money. But I think that no one was interested, except for Fiddy, in initiating a race to the bottom on fees. Fiddy's always pushing like zero fee. He's just like, just go zero.
Well, correct me if I'm wrong, but from what we've seen publicly leaked about Curve USD, it's possible to go down to zero fees on some of the Curve USD pools and still make money through lending, right?
Yeah, it should be. Yeah. Uh, the lending pools that we have right now, those ones you would still receive that lending interest, even if there was no trading fees. Yeah.
So, of course, that's
Fiddy's
gonna.
saying Fiddy's saying I was only saying we should go down to zero for maybe like a month max to gather data, which is fair. I think I would be intrigued to see.
Yeah, we may as well. It's a bear market anyway. We're all losing money. We could lose money for
Got
a
to
month.
run those
Kinda what I
experiments on chain.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think if there's a time to run experiments, maybe it's now, right? Like that's actually like, I ran that analysis for about the Frax BP thing, and of course it took us a little longer than expected, and then like I kind of felt bad because we really posted that way too late. And but in some of the cases I thought, maybe the parameters should be a little bit different. But on the other hand, I was like, this is a good time to experiment and just see what happens, right? I mean, as long as we're not running an experiment that would really have potential to really fuck over LPs, uh, it's a good time to do it.
Well, now's a good time anyway because Frax base pool is trying to gain ground anyway. So why
Yeah.
not kill off 3 pool ourselves and let Frax BP get all the liquidity?
I mean, if they want to be aggressive, then like I think that's fine. I I was the only concern I would have is if like just say we ramp A to Valhalla, and then like some coin depegs, people are just like ruined, and then everyone hates Curve, yada yada, because it's Curve's fault we lost money, etc.
That's fair. I guess maybe we shouldn't do that.
I mean, at least none of those, they're not pure Ponzi's.
Yeah, we'll pioneer new ways for people to lose money in crypto. So you can lose it by lending it to Sam Bankman-Fried, or now you can lose it through horrible like Dr. Mengele style mathematic experiments.
That's right. Yeah, yeah. You didn't account for we got a secret term in there, which is the where we rug you, the rug
Yeah.
pull term in the equation.
So you sent me this. I hope this is not confidential. This Desmos thing.
You can roll with it. Some of the
What's
math
that?
in there is wrong though.
Oh
A
shoot.
little bit of it is wrong, but have you played with it? Wait, actually, sure. Is anything in there that tells you like the density? I think I did that kind of wrong, but otherwise it works.
No, I mean it might be wrong. Like I mentioned, I am super left on the bell curve, but I identify as mid curve, so you have to respect my my identification for my intelligence.
Of
But
course,
pretend
of
I'm
course.
left of bell curve. Could you explain this to me?
Is that the one where it has sliders and like you can adjust the bonding curve? Is that the one you're talking about?
Yeah. Oh shoot. It every time I change windows, it turns the stream off. I don't know if there's a way to change that. So I can't show the sliders moving elegantly, but yeah, like everyone imagine
Oh,
what it looks like now, and then I'm gonna ramp up A, and now it looks different.
slow.
Looks much
I
more a
didn't
straight
realize there
line.
was a stream. I'm still opening up the stream window here. Well, anyways, is this just Desmos with a one pool or which one is?
This is one pool. It looks like because I can change the D parameter and the curve moves slightly further out.
Yeah, what? It's weird. The uh, like okay, what sliders are on there? That would be that would I can identify that. Is
Yeah,
there
there's
just
a
an A
D
slider or is there
and
other
an
ones?
A, and then it's got math for constant product like Uniswap, solid lease line, and then the curve
Oh,
stable swap.
oh yeah. So that's just like it's the same as the stuff in the Curve V1 white paper, but like you can just adjust it to see how it changes. I mean, like I make those because for me, uh, it helps me to make sense of like what an equation is doing. Like where I have like a manipulable kind of thing, and then I can adjust the parameters and see. For me, that helps me to intuit what's going on like a lot. Oh, now I can see it. Yeah, so that I mean that's just showing how you can ramp A. When A is close to zero, you have basically constant product. Which is the Uniswap V2 or balancer. And then if you ramp it up towards infinity, it will act like a constant sum, which is just like it will trade one to one, essentially no matter what, even if we go until we go completely broke, I guess.
Got it. So when you're like sitting here looking over all these pools, trying to decide what the parameter should be, Like when you look at this chart, like you just kind of sit there and say, okay, it's getting like super close to zero, and like this slight difference in the area between, for example, the red and the purple curve. Is that like economics for the area of that that the difference between these two curves, the profit the curve could make?
Um, Not exactly. It's like the most important thing to look at with this is to look at the curvature. So like so obviously like okay, green is curvy everywhere. So that means that essentially that means there's going to be slippage anytime there's a trade.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and so red stable swap is like the slope is one or approximately one throughout that whole curve. So that means the price is going to be close to one. It's set up that uh, re- essentially regardless of the pool's holdings or the balance of its holdings, it's still going to price things close to one.
Yeah. After like 2 years, I think I'm finally getting close to understanding that. Like, just look at the mem pool where it's like it gets like to 95% imbalanced, and at that point, people are like, "All right, now that's 95% imbalanced. Let's go ahead and start like changing the price a bit."
Yeah, the min pool, like that vote just slipped through somehow. It's just like rampant to 2000, which is like I think completely inappropriate. But over time, I don't know. It's like it a little bit fits the personality of the people who are LPing there. It's just like as long as people know in advance, okay, this is a YOLO pool. It's a it's high risk, high reward. I mean that's fine. I just wouldn't want it to be that people are going into something expecting having some particular risk expectation, but actually it's much worse.
Yeah. So full disclosure, I did put some money into the mem pool, and I don't understand mem, but I literally had that same mindset. I was like, okay, people say it's got a strong peg. I'm just gonna YOLO in, and it seems like every month there's like some news about Mim coming close to depegging, and yet it never does. So I
Yeah,
just
yeah.
keep letting it ride.
Yeah, yeah, dude. Like you gotta throw a little money in the min pool to feel alive.
It's the like it makes me feel more like a degenerate gambler than anything else. So I'm thinking about doing USDD.
Oh, dude, I don't know enough about it. I mean, I'm not sure. I don't know if I would. I mean, I was in the USDN pool for a very long time, like through many of those same kind of DPEG scares and stuff. And that was lucrative. Like back in the day, like the CRV emissions in USDN pool were like 200% annualized. Like, it was just ridiculous. And then like I remember being like, oh, I don't know if it's worth it when it went down to 70% annualized.
So what I'm getting from this is that
But
you're really good at getting early to Ponzi schemes and timing your exit.
isn't that's kind of the name of the game in a lot of these things, isn't it? I mean, uh, I don't know. USDN I thought had a little bit better. It has a better mechanism than like what's it called? UST did. It was actually much better, but like there's a few things in there that are you got to be careful about.
I was like 1 week away from joining UST when it collapsed. Like when the four pool was coming, I was like, all right, I don't think this is going to work, but it's clearly working. And, they're doing a
Yeah.
four pool with it. It's the future. I might as well throw a few $1,000 in, see what happens. And I'm so glad I waited. Like,
Oh my God, dude. Yeah.
how would
Yeah.
you like obviously that's like ancient history at this point, but how would you have even like gone about, because obviously you're super active with the risk team and everything, how would you go about like evaluating, like do you just want an A factor of 0 for that?
I mean, even with an A factor of 0, you're still still taking on risk. So I mean, if you think something's going to depeg, you should just simply not LP it. There's no real safe approach to. I mean, no matter what you're holding, some of this thing that you suspect is going to 0, which you don't want to do.
Yeah, so I just changed the graph there. At an A factor of 1, the curve is actually like steeper than the solidly curve. Closer to the Uniswap, I should say, than the solidly curve.
I feel like that might not be right. Now I'm concerned.
All right. Well,
Because I remember well, I don't know, but I remember thinking it was around like 7 or 8 where it went past the solidly one. The solidly one does have a nice feature that like right in the middle, it's actually the same as a constant sum. So it has technically infinite liquidity density, but yeah, I think that one's cool. But like I don't know if you can use it for everything. Like I think that the solidly curve is pretty good for maybe like somewhat stable forex and things like that. But I don't know that it's good just very generally.
I don't know how people are making these little Pepes fly across the screen, but it's hilarious. So please keep it up, everyone.
I'm here for it.
Yeah.
Yeah, my son stayed home from school sick like a couple weeks ago, and I was working with Chanho. We were chatting on Telegram, and Chanho, those of you who know him, has a very refined Pepe collection,
It's
which
very
he uses
impressive.
across the various platforms. And so after working for a while, my son he goes, I know you guys don't do anything for work. You guys just send frog pictures to each other.
That's what I'm saying. If neuroscientists are quitting to focus on like all these like various Ponzi schemes, it's not good for humanity. And yeah, Fiddy points out that Chanho was late to the Pepe game, as was I. Like I was actually talking with him about this in a DM the other week, and saying that like first like I had read that it was like a hate speech symbol or something, and I'm like, okay, I'm not gonna post that. That's gonna get me thrown in prison even faster. Um,
Yeah.
but I gave up. I learned to stop worrying and embrace the Pepe.
You gotta embrace the Pepe. Everything's hate speech these days. So just pick a cute one at least.
I guess that's a good point. um,
Yeah, let's scrub that one in the radio edit.
oh no such thing. This is live. This is live. So everyone's gonna. But
Good.
you
Good.
no longer work for anyone except for the Curve DAO. So unless the Curve DAO chooses to cancel you, you're pretty safe.
That's right. You gotta probably go take it pretty far out of left field for the crew to start saying, "Sir, that is offensive."
All right. So I'm pulling up this tweet here, and actually, like, it's funny is I can't load this tweet on Twitter directly. So I think that Twitter may have actually crashed because people have been talking about how Twitter's like 90% of their staff has been fired. So I haven't been on Twitter in the last hour, but it may already be Twitter apocalypse. So this Substack may be the last place we can see this. And this gets into
goodness, guys.
This gets back into that subject of kind of Curve V2 versus Uni V3. And I thought this was like a super interesting graph. I could tell it was done using Matplotlib in your Jupyter notebook, I assume. But talk to me a bit about how you came across this and were able to like compare these two.
I was thinking about this when there was that really good paper where they compared Uniswap V3 and Curve V2. I think who is it? OXD, but I forget the what it was through. Some like fancy publication.
Was that
At any
Blockworks
rate,
or no? It was
I think it was Masari or whatever.
Masari, yeah.
Or is that it?
something like
Yeah.
that. Yeah. And like so, one thing that came out there, which I mean was intuitive, but they showed it nicely, was that basically like the Curve V2 is a little bit expensive in terms of gas. So I was trying to just look through things like, okay, well, what does that entail? And one thing you'd expect that to entail is that people would prefer doing larger trades on Curve V. The gas fee is just a fixed rate, so as a proportion of your overall trading fees, the bigger your trade, the more willing you are to swallow that content fee. And so I compared just the distribution of trade sizes, and I was actually shocked at how different they are. So there are tons of little micro trades that go through Uni V3, and I wanted to look into this further, but I had a few other things that I was busy with. But like I kind of think some of these are like where ETH USDC is like the intermediate transaction. So maybe you're going from like
Oh, okay.
ETH, you want to go like USDC to random shitcoin, it's gonna be routed through ETH. So you get a bunch of these like little small trades in there, but crv2 is like it just doesn't really get those because the gas is just a little too expensive. But in some ways, seeing this distribution is encouraging because it shows you that like it operates almost like a over the counter type thing where it's just like, oh, well, I want to do like a fat chunk trade, I can do it on curve v2 and I won't get very much slippage. And I guess that actually the interview that's related to the alpha I was going to leak, and I hope Fiddy doesn't get mad at me, which is that these guys have done a lot of work to reduce the gas on curve v2, and it's like to the magnitude where I was like very surprised.
Yeah.
And so that should be coming soon, and that's going to be real good because, like I was just saying, that's kind of the one weakness of curve v2. Otherwise, like it's actually incredible. Like it's the more I work on it and study it, I'm like, wow, this is actually very like elegant, nice design. It's just a little gas expensive, so that help on mainnet, and I think as level 2s and whatnot expand more, maybe on zk sync or something, especially whatever becomes most popular is going to be great.
Yeah, that's so interesting, and that actually like ties to just some general questions that I had about Uniswap, which I think you answered pretty much, which is that it's just it sounds like it's these kind of like small traders who come in and they've read on like Wall Street Bets or something that like such and such like small market cap coin is like going to do the next 1000x, so all of a sudden everyone runs into that pump and dump, and it makes perfect sense that it's going through like other like pools, and that's where Uniswap's seeing that volume. I've posted this question to some people, and like most people kind of lean one direction on this, but I'm curious to hear what you think. Like, does the crypto risks team do too good of a job at protecting us from these kind of like tiny little doggy Ponzi tokens? Like, if someone came in and said, let's create a Shiba Inu pool and incentivize it with curve rewards, I think everyone would be like, no, that's a scam, we shouldn't do it. How much volume are we sacrificing in the long tail of like garbage coins by focusing only on quality coins?
Well, first of all, I don't know if you saw there's some discussion of Shiba Hamas.
Shiba Hamas?
Yeah,
is that like a Shiba
Hamas.
llama?
No, it's a Bahamas token.
Oh, of course.
That was just a wisecrack that I think Michael made the other day. Some of these things that people say, like I will routinely be laughing so hard I'm tearing up, like because it's so funny, and it's like, oh my god, like there's not that many people that, like there's so much detail required to know the context for this joke. Okay, so to get to the actual question, wait, what was it again?
Just to what extent should we
yeah.
police like, and because I think Curve does a great job at only having high quality tokens, like especially like in this bear market. I have like for the time being, like I like withdrew some of my coins out of pools because I was panicked about everything, right? And as I've seen how well Curve has held up, I just like have been aping back into everything because I'm like, yields are pretty good right now, and I actually feel much safer keeping my money in any given Curve pool that the crypto risks team has looked at, as opposed to like any given centralized exchange. So like Curve does a great job at protecting people, but does that come at too much expense to volume, or like what's the trade-off there?
Sure, yeah. I mean, so the thing is like, so anything crypto risk team says is recommendation, So if the DAO is like, we want to take this risk, of course they can vote to. That the current products are really that well optimized for shit coins. Like, I don't know. I don't think a Curve E2 pool would work really that well for a pump and dump because in some ways it's kind of naturally designed to smooth out some of that volatility. It has an implicit assumption that like there's some autocorrelation in the prices. The historical price is predictive of the subsequent price, And almost by definition, these pump and dumps, some of these pump and dumps they just explicitly violate that assumption. Also, I have sometimes thought about, okay, well maybe we should make a pool which is a little bit more optimized for that. Like, so for example, actually, you can make a pool that has less impermanent loss. It's more conservative than constant product. You could use like a constant harmonic mean or something like that, and maybe that would be good for these long tail assets. But I don't know if Curve wants to get into that. And but it is true that like if you look at volume, it really comes down to about like, well, at least last time I looked. So this is kind of a stale take. I'm not sure if it's still true. But last time I looked, it was like 30%, 30%, 30% or whatever. One third is stable coins, one third is ETH and BTC, and one third is shit coins.
And I'm paging through the Uniswap came out their fee switch report recently, which actually had some really interesting like graphs and charts in it. I don't know if you get a chance to read through it because they take a victory lap about how phenomenal their stuff is. Like, do you get a chance to read through any of it all and like offer your take on it?
Yeah, I glanced through and I thought it was really good. I mean, I think this is all accurate. Like, obviously, UniV3 has been a huge success. Of course, a lot of the discussion on CT has been, well, it has been mostly at the expense of the LPs. Arguably, they're taking on too much risk, and they're really in that way incentivizing people to trade against these pools because they are another leaking money. Yeah, I mean, this is accurate, and it's a little bit what we're up against. I mean, I think as especially if the name of the game is kind of passive LPing, like Curve V2 is just like such a superior product in that regard. But that's not to say that there are good uses for Uni V3. Like, for example, if you want to like ease into a position, if you set up if you pick ticks that are outside of the current place, and it's kind of like you can use that to average into a position. And also it's like getting it's like having a negative trading fee, right? Like, so you're easing into a position and you're getting paid to do it. So that's excellent. It's really good for that. Well, I mentioned before when I wrote that little thing to you, like my gripe has been, about this, that it's not really, I don't think, that good for stablecoin trades. And that was one of the first things that they kind of advertised, and in fact, that was a meme for a little while, right? Like, oh, this is the curve killer or whatever. And actually, like, the thing is that you take on unspecified risk when you do these things where it's like, okay, I just concentrate liquidity in the center tick. Once you're outside the tick range, you're 100% in the worst of the two assets, So I mean, that's basically like a cliff type nonlinearity where it goes from 0 impermanent loss to potentially 100% impermanent loss pretty quick, and you wouldn't even know it until you try to withdraw.
Yeah, but that being said, there's still people that like LPing Uniswap V3. So what's kind of your takeaway from this report on how, like, does this mean that Curve is doomed or unsuccessful, or is there a chance? Like, what would be your recommendations based on some of the stuff? And just to highlight one slide that I thought was interesting, that I didn't know this, but algorithmic trading drives 70% of the volume, which I thought was kind of cool.
Oh, that is pretty cool.
Like all MEV bots.
Yeah, I was gonna say, is algorithmic trading like a euphemism for MEV? Yeah, it looks like it is. I mean, it depends on your view. Some MEV trades are just arbitrage, and that's cool. That's fine. But sandwich attacks and stuff like that, like, that's, to me, is not really actually a ethical thing to do. I mean, it's explicit, very small time frame manipulation. It's like almost explicitly what we're trying to get away from. But that's not on Uni themselves, actually. I mean, that's just part of that's just
the superior financial system we're building.
That's right. I mean, but for Curve, like, I think Curve is fine, just continuing doing what it does best. I mean, like I said before about Curve V2, like, it's actually like quite genius. It's a very very good system, but it suffers a little bit just because it costs too much in terms of gas. And as that gets more optimized, that's going to be better. And also, just as gas decreases, just as there's more throughput on the chain, and we have better L2 solutions, things like that. I think Curve V2 is going to continue to be just like a superior product for passive LPing.
Yeah, I definitely like it a lot for passive LPing. So I'm as lazy as it gets.
Yeah, right. I mean, that's kind of part of the point. You make a deal where it's like, okay, I'll take the fees and I'll take on the risk of impermanent loss, and in a lot of cases, that exchange is worth it. And I mean, in a fair number of cases, like Curve V2 has not really had that much impermanent loss. Like it's just been like just chugging along, remarkably balanced and just like nice.
Yeah, I'm trying to pull up your curve sim. Speaking of all this, so here we go. Let's pop this on screen here. So congratulations! Like I know this has been a long time in coming, and you and Chan Ho, I thought did phenomenal job, not just kind of getting this all together, but like making it simple to digest and understand. Now I mentioned I'm like very dumb, so I tried running it, and it hung overnight. So I think I did something wrong with it.
Oh, you know what? Number one reason that happens is if you accidentally input a float somewhere instead of a
okay.
integer.
Must be something.
But
okay.
Well, actually, you know what? Just file a bug report and we'll see. Because some of those things, it's like we should just make a little like message. It's like, did you input a float?
Fair.
Things like that.
Well,
just to be helpful.
So another funny thing that happened was I installed this and it broke my Brownie for some reason. So I actually had to uninstall it after that because I had to record a video that used Brownie. So now I need to uninstall Brownie and reinstall this and play with it again. Or actually probably just do it in a virtual environment.
I wonder if the only thing I can imagine would be if the environment variables for some API keys are clashing. I'm not really sure.
I could definitely take more notes when I do it next time. It had some trouble as I was doing the pip install. It was like there were a few libraries that were not quite found, and I think it uninstalled something that Brownie depended on.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, I would say definitely do it in a virtual environment, because like one thing is we use in there the latest beta version of what do you call that? The Ethereum Python thing, Web3.eth.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure I saw Web3 in there. Yeah, Web3.
Yeah, so we use the latest beta version because you can do asynchronous contract calls, which is like nice, makes things a lot faster. But that's not pushed on their official release yet. So it could have been that created a conflict. Yeah, I definitely recommend we did a lot of things to really eke out the most possible speed we could. So including stuff like that. So yeah, I would say use a separate virtual environment for sure.
Yeah, I mean the thing is, I might go with Brownie for the virtual environment because yours is actually getting updated more often than Brownie now.
That's like entirely Chanho, man. Like he's just like, I feel like I'm just trying to keep up with him sometimes.
Yeah, Chanho was I met so many brilliant and smart people through crypto Twitter. It kind of blows my mind. And Chanho is definitely one of those people. So we have to see if we can get him into one of these parties. And there's a number of these brilliant people sitting here listening. And wish more people would speak up because it's supposed to be a llama party.
That's right. Yeah. Oh, I Eat Bears says he bought a bag of Shiba Hamas. That's good to see. Should we pump it right now, guys?
Yeah, let's do it. Let's go Shiba Hamas to the moon. Something's got to go up.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, by the way, could someone actually make it real quick? Someone needs to launch the ERC20.
It's not tough to launch an ERC20, but now I'm going to uninstall Curve Sim and launch Brownie again, so it's like a whole thing.
But yeah, even myself, I use a virtual environment for it. There's a lot of stuff in there that's pretty customized.
Got it. So, talk us through some of all this. Like, how much of this is, like, the primary user for this would be, for example, like a protocol that's trying to set up a pool of their own and V1 pool specifically, and wants to kind of play with some parameters ahead of time, right? So this might be like Aave is launching their Go stablecoin, and they decide they want to use a curve pool for liquidity, right?
Yeah, right. Yeah, so that like I kind of think of it as though there's like two main use cases. So the one is kind of originally designed for was just to run these simulations, just like you're saying. You want to optimize some parameters, and that's either because you're launching a new pool and you're not sure what to do when you're starting, or you're considering some kind of parameter change. It seems like maybe we could improve the parameters, so we're going to run a simulation. So actually, Chanho set up something. We haven't really documented it yet because I think we want to make it a little more user friendly first. But it actually already runs. You can now just request the simulation in through GitHub. So you can just type in the parameters and it'll run in the background, and then it'll make it'll fork the essentially it'll make a branch of CurveSim and that with your results in it, which is super cool. I'm sure we'll share a little bit more about that in the near future. But it already works, but I think we're going to try and make it a little more user friendly.
That's amazing.
What we
Is that
Huh?
is that the GitHub code spaces? What is that?
GitHub
There was
what?
a new feature by there was a new feature by GitHub, right? Where you had code spaces, where you could just run code on GitHub.
Yeah,
So I can just
I think it is through that. It's like a actually like we kind of repurposed like a testing what they call them workflows. So like what we were already doing was we were running tests through those workflows, which were to test to make sure that when we changed the code, the results weren't changing, And but then we realized you could do you could just be like, oh, the test is we're testing this pool, and so it kind of works in that way. I think it does work in that code spaces thing. I think eventually we'll have to start paying for that, but for now it just runs on there, and
There's a limit on
Yeah.
it. Like every month you get like 100 hours of build time. So if this
Yeah.
simulation is taking very long, you're gonna have to buy additional build time on GitHub.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, I eventually will have a proper solution where I think we'll just have like an API. We'll have our own web page and stuff. So this is just what we'll have for now for convenience. And I think essentially what we want is to make it convenient for teams to be able to run a simulation or whatever whenever they make a parameter proposal. Oh yeah, okay. So that's just one use case. The other use case is that you can initiate a simulated pool as a user and just kind of take a look at, oh, if I were to withdraw right now, well, how many tokens would I get? But okay, just say the price changes to whatever. How many tokens would I get if I withdraw? Or you could do things like, well, I want to arb the price to whatever. How big of a trade do I need to do to arb the price there? Things like that. So it's like it's also just like having a little interactive simulated curve pool that you can just use through the through the what do you call it, like command line or whatever.
Do you think it could be ported to a browser, which makes running simulation a little bit easier than through a command line, so anybody can do it on their browser? They just go to the website, fill in the parameters.
Yep, exactly.
It's possible with Python.
I mean, that's the goal. I think we're gonna hook up just some kind of like JavaScript front end, and then we'll have the code running as a service on the back end. And honestly,
I actually meant like locally in the browser on a person's.
Oh yeah, I don't know. It's probably possible, but I think it would.
I'm asking because if you're gonna have a service or an API server and everybody's simulating like 1,000 things, it's gonna cost. The cost is gonna explode. So it's better if it's possible to run it locally.
Yeah, that's a really good point.
It's pretty slow and it's single. What do you call it? It's single threaded, so I'm not sure how demanding these simulations are on these CPUs. How long does it take for an average simulation to be completed on your PC?
It depends, but like it actually depends on the number of coins in the pool, which is kind of funny. But it really is. It's just a little bit harder to solve for the arbitraging for if you have like 4 coin meta pool. I mean, so for a 2 coin pool, it's maybe like on 4 cores, like 10 minutes. but it can go up to maybe like half an hour or something like that.
And are there, what kind of data do you need to run a simulation? Is it going to make a lot of Web3 calls, or does it need a lot of data? Are there going to be a lot of RPC calls, maybe to a wallet or Alchemy or Ethereum?
No, only it does do those kind of calls at the beginning, but only just to look up the curve state or the curve pool state. And now we just have that run through the subgraph, the volume subgraph that Benny's really contributed a lot to, or I don't know if he's done the whole thing, or but we do a couple RPC calls just at the beginning, though. It's not like calling it all the time. So you could say it's for each simulation, maybe less than 10 RPC calls. And the real data that it needs is just some kind of price time series. And you can pull that either from CoinGecko, or we use this paid Nomics service where they have really high quality historical data for like not as much money as you would expect, compared to a lot of other things I've seen. But we could also, another reason that it would be good to have, I guess maybe this could work with a local run too, is like people could use the Nomics data. Like we're like allowed to offer some kind of service, which is, dependent on the Nomics data, or even if just say we wanted to make our own CoinGecko website or whatever, with the Nomics data in the background, we could do that. But we're not really supposed to just like download CSVs of the data or whatever and just give it out to people. So that's the.
We're just gauging if it's even possible to have it run locally on the browser, but yeah, as I can hear it, it's pretty good. It should be possible with a little bit of work.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Yeah, that's just one pool, simulation of one pool, right? But then eventually, I think what I think how the simulation framework evolves is you will have maybe multiple pools, or at least a simulator in this case can at least set up the experiment with multiple pool setups. Like for example, there would be an order book, there would be two stable swap pools, there would be a V2 pool, and then people would be just trying to optimize based on stuff that they see over there. So I think the simulation complexity increases with, of course, experimentation complexity. So it's not as simple as doing stuff on a browser, I think.
Yeah, that's true. That is where we're headed. I'm not exactly sure the best way to do things. Like maybe we'll just have to have some light gating in terms of giving out API keys. I mean, I'm not sure. I mean, because we're happy to pay for the compute, I think, but not if people are spamming it,
I know that you said you're kind of philosophically opposed to MEV, but you could use this to help MEV traders to ARB pools, right?
Yeah, with some pretty minor modifications, this could be an ARB bot, yeah.
So, I mean, that's a good way of funding it, right? You can have the funding, all the MEV profits go to paying for API keys.
That's true, yeah. That's a pretty good idea. Like, we'll just be constantly, also it's a service to everyone because we're making sure that the no ARB constraint is always satisfied.
So the curve
you guys
block
like
builder.
efficient markets, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, so I mean, the main thing we did here is like, so now it used to just be a script. Like it was a script to do one thing. And actually, I was cracking up because I was like, so for most, we were able to do a good job we changed everything. The only code that is untouched so far is the plotter, but I'm about to replace that too. So it's like we've gone full ship of Theseus on this, but the user interface for the main things is still almost exactly the same. So you almost wouldn't be able to tell that we did anything, which I think is kind of funny. But the important part is that we rewrote it as a package with everything properly kind of abstracted out. So it makes it so we can easily upgrade things and just substitute in new parts. So we broke down what we call a simulation pipeline as having two components, basically. One is a parameter sampler and one is a price sampler, which is just the time series data sampler. And essentially you have an outer loop of looping over parameters and an inner loop of looping over time points. And we made it so you can substitute parameter samplers and time samplers into the what we have a pipeline framework now. And just with those two parts, you can have like enormously expressive customizability of the simulations. So I talked about this in the written part that I sent you over. Like, so one thing, for example, that I think is important is before we've just, and still now, we just look at like the last 2 months of data and we run a simulation on that. Sometimes we change that duration based off of some of our knowledge of just the time scale of importance for the market. But like, okay, do we know that last 2 months or whatever is really representative of what price action is going to be like in the future? Like, really not really. So one thing we've been working on for price samplers is like to, for example, take a feed of price data, fit a model to it, and then generate random streams of statistically identical alternative price histories, but they're statistically identical but different data. So then we can kind of think about, okay, well, how generalizable are these results? Is it completely that, okay, what happened recently is like just random aberration, or if we kind of add some noise, shake things up a little bit, how much do those results change? And so the idea is to improve, like, kind of get more robust data about what are the best parameter choices. And then, so on top of that, the other thing is in terms of what we call the parameter samplers. So right now we do what you would call just a grid search, or you might just call it brute force, which is you do a parameter sweep across every parameter you care about and take every combination. So, typical V1 is like, okay, we take A equals 100, 200, 300, 400 by phi equals 1 BPS, 2 BPS, 3 BPS, or whatever. So it's just, you can think of it as a grid of parameters, like just here's the A's, here's the fees, and we run this one, this one, this one, this one, and this, But you can do this in like a more smart way, which is that you can use these techniques that basically it'll run a chunk of simulations, like maybe 10 different parameter sets chosen at random, and then it'll try and figure out, okay, well, you guys care about maximizing profit, right? Okay, based on what I've already seen, I'm going to try and sample other parameters. And so like that allows you to kind of do this kind of stuff in a more efficient way, which was important for V2 because V2 has so many free parameters. If you were to do a grid search, you quickly have like millions of combinations. You're right over there, Garrett?
Oh yeah, I'm taking it in. So like I've seen a lot of these charts that you do on Twitter. Like you'll post these like gorgeous, like colorful charts where you've done these like parameter testing in multiple dimensions. So before now, was it like the same process, or was it like maybe like a PyTest integrative testing to sweep over these parameters, or like is this basically just like taking what you used to do and kind of formalizing it?
It's taking what we used to do and making a kind of abstracted framework where what we used to do is just one instance of what's possible to do.
Nice.
So in other words, we created like a pipeline framework, and then we built the old approach within the pipeline framework. But the pipeline framework is extremely generalizable. And so, basically we just have to write a couple plugins that we add in there. And then now, okay, suddenly this is applicable to, for now, V1 pools and meta pools, but it'll also just work for V2 pools and stuff because everything is kind of properly modularized.
Very cool. So thanks for all the work on doing this.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's not purely out of altruism. They pay me.
Oh.
Actually, I mean, arguably you guys pay me, right? You guys are anyone who has locked a VCRV, I guess.
Well, as a person who has some VECRV, seems like a worthwhile investment from where I'm sitting. So you've earned yourself another research grant if that's what you're here for.
All right. Yeah, that's right. I'm here to pitch to you guys. You guys need to go right on the Gov forum and give these guys one. No, I just.
This is sort of like the PhD defending your thesis, right?
That's right. Yeah, yeah. Fortunately, no swords involved yet.
Wait, PhD theses involve sword fighting?
I think in like Iceland or something, they give you a sword. I don't know. Maybe that's not true.
I had not heard that.
Someone told me that someone told me it used to be violent.
Is that right? Yeah, I think
I
that's
mean,
true. It's like
so in
It used
Europe,
to basically be a duel, essentially, where for math professors in, you know, the mid-centuries, what you would do is if you were a professor, anyone could challenge you to essentially a mathematic duel for your position, and then you would write down like 10 mathematical problems, they would write down 10, and you would have to send them to each other with a certain amount of time, and whoever, solved enough of the other ones would claim the position. So you could like lose your professorship by essentially intellectual duel.
that's
crazy.
amazing. That is
That's how it
amazing.
used to go, yeah, like in 1700s in
Why'd we
Europe,
change it? That
in
seems
the
like such a
math
better
field.
system.
Yeah, we've clearly
It
downgraded.
doesn't make enough money. Yeah, it doesn't make enough money, right? So the way that you make money is you hire a lot of PhDs, and then you pay them basically nothing, and then they
Oh,
do your research for
Oh, you mean
you
the
pretty cheap.
postdoc system? Yeah, the postdoc system, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
but if they're all
I was
dying
gonna
off from
ask
the duels,
Naga.
I see.
I was gonna ask Naga, like, I find a good kinship with you because, I also have I have a PhD in science also with a postdoc. So, and now I found myself in this little space. So, I was wondering for your neuroscience, were you doing a lot of, coding or data analysis, and were you thinking about, transitioning to data science or whatever before you found, and then you basically got like, red pilled right down the DeFi hole, or how did it exactly happen?
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, a lot of what I did was just data analysis and kind of like number crunching and coming up with models, stats models for whatever data, and like yeah, I didn't have much of a plan when I quit, but I was just like, dude, I just like, can't do this anymore. Like in my mind, I quantified it as a pay to bullshit ratio, and I was like, dude, this is way out of whack. Like, so anyways, yeah, my plan was I was like, okay, well, maybe I can start some kind of a data science consulting or statistical consulting type of thing. And basically, I was just like cold calling people and just like, just no one was interested except for some like weird ass stuff that I was just like, dude, I don't think I want to do this. Um,
How did those cold calls
and-
go? Hi, this is Naga King. Wait, don't hang up. I have numbers to sell you.
Dude, like my friend had like I don't know exactly how he did this, but like so he had another friend which I think was just like stealing these cold call lists. Like I don't know how he got them. Like other people would like develop these and he was somehow like like through some nefarious way getting his hands on other people's lists and then he'd find anything relevant on there and send it to us for a small fee. So we would set up calls and like talk to these people and it's just like one of the wildest ones was these guys were like trying to optimize the supply chain for like ammo shipments uh for the US Army or whatever and I was like okay, first of all I don't know, like I don't know that I want to contribute to that. But second of all, I was trying to get away from just like working for government grants and stuff. I just felt like that whole world is just like it's so crappy. Um, yeah. So okay. So, anyways, at the same time though, like it was like DeFi summer. I was getting involved in some of this stuff, and I really liked Curve, so I'd invested in it, and it was like I was kind of looking through, and I was like, well, there's a few free parameters in here, like. I feel like we should optimize those, So I pitched it. We used to chat a lot on the Curve Discord, even a long time ago. Like Wormhole Oracle was on there and everything. Like, and this guy Nico, he told me he's like just pitch it as fast as you can, like because I was like, okay, I want to show proof of concepts and stuff, and he's like, listen, they haven't done any grants yet. Like, just show them your idea, and I think they'll be into it. And so I did that, and then it's like me and one other group. We got the first grants from Curve, and then it just continued doing that.
Just on the government funding for ammo optimization, the shipment of optimization part, it's like they make these this numbers game. It's a reductionist way of looking at the world, right? So they break it down. They bring it down to numbers, and all you have to do is make one number go up. So if you focus on that for quite some time, you tend to forget what the number actually means. It can mean anything, and then you start saying, "Oh, maybe I should optimize it. Maybe I can fit more ammo in this box." And then suddenly it feels fulfilling, but actually somebody's dying.
Yeah,
Based on
exactly.
your work. So it's not so different from what they do in, for example, in energy trading too. So or energy markets as well. It's quite the same. So
Yeah,
I mean, you just stare at a number at some point on a screen, so you forget what that number. It's the same thing. What's happening with like if you look at Facebook and all those social media companies, and they start to do some very crazy stuff. To them, it's like, oh, we're just trying to make this number go up. We're trying to maximize profits, but at the same time, you're actually probably introducing some sort of content to your viewers that probably you shouldn't. So it's quite interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's super interesting stuff, and to your point about like getting government grants, it's sort of interesting that you would be dependent on the government for money, whereas at the same time, like the government is sort of like actively trying to kill DeFi projects. So, like you talked a bit about the regulatory state of things, but I'm wondering for anyone who hasn't read it, if you could kind of expand upon like where you're seeing the current situation going on with kind of the regulatory state in the U.S.
I don't know. Like, it's hard for me to say, but I guess. Well, yeah, I feel mixed, right? So like, I think that definitely this whole FTX thing will be used as a sort of cudgel against even stuff that it clearly doesn't apply to. But yeah, like I mentioned here, clearly there's some big shots up there, like JP Morgan, who at least understand this distinction. And I mean, we know that those guys are like pretty influential with these regulators and stuff. And maybe they just have just enough money in this system to try and defend it.
Was it JP Morgan that came out? I think one of them came out and said that when they get involved, they're going to be doing it on like some of the big name protocols. Like, so people are thinking like Aave, Curve, Uniswap are the kind of things they're going to be playing with. Is that your like read on what JP Morgan's doing with this?
I think so. Like, I think they did their first DeFi trade, like pretty recently.
It was on Polygon, I think. I think it was using Aave.
Yeah, right. I forget, they're kind of blurred in my mind, like, because to me they're all just kind of like, oh, big investment bank, but like they had even maybe forked Aave and made a slightly custom version or something.
It wasn't Aave as we use it right now. It was some forked version where everything's KYC'd, AML'd, and all that stuff. So
yeah, I mean that's fine to me. I mean, if that's your like kind of government requirement, I think it's okay if you have sub areas where people require KYC. It's just not okay if at the core level everything requires KYC, right? So I mean, I think that okay, actually this is my real fear, and actually this is probably how it plays out. It'll be the same as like when they legalized weed or whatever, or at least now it's like implicitly legalized. Basically, like they kind of like try and destroy something, make it as illegal as possible until they can just like crush it and then let the like already dominant corporations like buy it up and then make it legal. Like that's probably like my cynical take is that that's most likely to happen. But I don't know, like I mentioned in there, it's like crypto does have this magic power where they always have like a final switch where you can say, all right, we're taking this completely underground and you guys can't regulate us at all. And there will be some people that will never compromise, and that definitely changes the dynamics, I think.
Yeah,
if someone comes to regulate us and we're like, okay, well, we're moving all DeFi onto Monero or whatever,
I'm not sure where you're located, but here in Washington, Washington State, I'm pretty sure that what happened was because Washington State was amongst the first to legalize marijuana, and I think that they did it, but they taxed it at 25% each step of the chain. So from like farmer to distributor is 25% taxed, distributor to store 25% taxed. store to customer 25% taxed. So what ended up happening, from according to the papers at least, is that the entire black market for marijuana continued because people didn't want to pay the 75% taxes on things. Even though like stores were all of a sudden popping up, like drug dealers were still like making a bonanza. It just this time it wasn't like regulatory arbitrage; it was tax arbitrage.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. I had a good teacher when I was in high school. Like he was more like what you'd expect as a high level professor, but he had this poli sci class in high school, and he would say like if you want to observe raw capitalism, the best place to look at it is in the drug trade, because it's like it's so has so much circumvented like all of this legal structure and everything that you can see like. All right, this is how this is like raw supply and demand like plus some guns.
And now this teacher's in prison, I hope.
I think he like bailed to France when I think around the time the Iraq War started. Like he was like really pissed about Guantanamo Bay and stuff like that, and he's just like, I'm getting the fuck out of here.
Yeah, fair enough. Fair enough. You were. I've apologies if you have to jump. Completely understood. I've kept you for over an hour at this point. But if you want to stick around, like I'm happy to keep going.
Oh, for sure. No, I could stay for another like hour and a half. So.
Oh, excellent. We're gonna have a llama party to end all parties.
Yeah.
So you were pretty involved with the Matt West campaign, right?
A little bit, yeah. Like I talked to him a few times and then like kind of tried to go around, pass the hat around on his behalf.
Yeah, he seemed like a very cool candidate. It's kind of a bummer he didn't get through the primary stage, but it seems like politics is crazy, and like it seems like in his district it would have been getting through the primary, and if he got through the primary he would have been in good shape. But like that involves so much kind of like internal like party dynamics. It seems so tough to do.
Yeah, he was like really great. Like he was the only person running in politics in my entire life where like I talked to him and I was like not only did I feel that his like answers were like, oh, I completely agree, but I was like in cases where I wasn't sure or where maybe we slightly disagreed, I was like, but this guy is clearly very reasonable. I trust his reasoning process and his intuitions, you know.
Yeah, what's he up to now? Is he back to developing for urine?
I'm not sure actually. I haven't talked to him for a little while. Maybe I should hit him up and see. I mean, hopefully he's still trying to do something in the political sphere.
Because we need people like that, in my opinion.
Yeah, well, and he was also a scientist. I forget exactly, maybe a chemist. And you know, maybe he could go and shake up the funding world in science or something. Work at NIH and try and fix things there.
Yeah, have you been following much of the kind of like crypto science organizations? Like I could think of a few off the top of my head. There's like the Vita DAO, which is focused on like life extension, and I think Vitalik's talked some about like how we can like try and like get more like grants going through like crypto processes. Do you follow that at all?
Yeah, a little bit. Like I don't know. Well, my impression a little bit was that we're still a little bit in like pipe dream phase and trying to solidify some things. Although there was like, didn't someone they funded their research by selling an NFT or whatever? It was like some kind of biology research.
Yeah, I think I saw something like that.
Yeah, no, I think that's like a really good system. I mean, I don't know exactly how you repay the. I mean, I guess yeah, your grant is funded by investors, right? So sometimes it's hard with science, especially basic research. It's like, well, there's no immediate economic outcome of this, so like essentially you're donating, right? But I mean, I think even like peer review and whatnot should be on chain, and also the peer reviewers should get paid, and I think the whole system should be integrated so that like, okay, you no longer have journals as these kind of predatory external people. You actually have like some people's job is to curate and okay, release each journal as you know, NFT or whatever, and you know, whatever way you want to do it. But it should be organized in a way where, you know, scientists can kind of in a decentralized way organize their own forum or whatever, organize their conferences. And I think it's important to pay peer reviewers, because I think that peer review is like just is so broken right now, and a lot of that is because it's everyone's last priority. Everyone that I have ever met in science has the equivalent of like 3 to 4 jobs, which is like doing their research, teaching students, being the manager of the lab, kind of, and then kind of like just like going to like meetings, bureaucracy stuff. And then on top of that, okay, you have to be a peer reviewer. And I think the result is that like people don't take it that seriously and they end up using a lot of heuristics just to, including just, oh, is the author famous or whatever. Or just like, oh, how much does this go against my intuition, rather than giving a really sincere, high quality review. So I've seen some journals where they do like the review process is it's all posted with the article. So like there's a journal called eLife, which is like that, and that's really made the quality of their. I thought that their peer review process was much better than any other ones I experienced, and I'd been on both ends. I'd been reviewed there, and I was a reviewer there, and I thought it was great. And I thought that the discussion that they post, it actually adds a lot of context to the article. Like the article you usually see is the polished output of a long process. But if you want to get the deeper details of the peer review discussion, they should be there. So I don't know how you police the quality of peer review and stuff like that. But anyways, I mean, to put a long story short, like I think that there's a lot of potential there, like 100%. And that was one of the first use cases for this kind of stuff that I started thinking about.
So something like
to
crypto
bounce off
risks.
that. Yeah, exactly. I was going to say that, I totally agree, Naga, from my experience from the peer review process. Absolutely. Like it needs to be completely transparent. It makes sense that it should be like public, even with pseudonymous, people pseudonymously can read your paper. Something like archive, or chem archive, bioarchive on chain. I know that Brian Armstrong, love him or hate him, at least Coinbase is highly regulated and hasn't stolen a bunch of people's funds yet. But I know that he talks about he's starting his like next big venture is focused specifically on this. He's like basically putting all of his time into trying to create kind of an open source science platform. I don't know if he's going to, utilize on-chain technology with it, but Brian Armstrong is working directly on this. It's like his next big venture is to try to make this more public and open.
I mean, that's awesome. I think that's critically important. I mean, like, well, I don't know where people fall in the like whole like COVID thing, but I don't know if you guys saw about like the guy. Ah!
I just turned the screen off for a second. You're good.
Oh, okay. I thought the whole thing went down. Okay. There was that article in the Lancet where it was like the guy that oh god, what was this guy? He wrote like any like lab leak theory is purely conspiracy
Oh yeah,
theory
that
or
was
whatever.
absolutely insane, dude. And he was like the guy who funded the research to begin with. It was absolutely
Yeah.
insane. Such a conflict of interest. That was like really early on, obviously just covering his tracks. Yeah, it was insane.
It's the most
Totally
corrupt shit
crazy.
I've ever seen. Like it was completely self-serving, and at that point, well, still today, any reasonable person I think has to be open-minded. I don't think the case is closed. But even back then, it was so much more unknown, and this guy's just like he's like it's absurd to suggest that it's anything but this like bat market thing or whatever. It was bad, and like I just don't understand how that was not taught or considered by the like top medical journal in the world or whatever. And it turned out all the co-authors were just like his cronies. They were all in grants together and everything. It was ugly.
Yeah, if you're like one of these made men or women in science, your stuff just gets basically rubber stamped. I don't even know, like, you know what I'm saying? You see that name come across, and nobody's going to give a harsh review to that. They're just going to rubber stamp it and keep going,
Yeah, if you look in the kind of like top level like vanity journals, like even the big name people's papers are written somewhat sloppily. Like I'm not saying that the like quality of the science is bad, but they get a pass on all kinds of stuff just for kind of being a well-known name, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. Make science great again.
Yeah, exactly.
Sounds to me just more like a human bias thing, if nothing else. Because if you're one of these journals and some big name person comes through, like you're probably really excited because that's going to drive like excitement and buzz for the journal, right? Like the immediate analogy that popped to my mind
Well,
was go
there's a
on.
profit incentive. Yeah, absolutely. There's a profit incentive behind all of it. You know, it's basically, you know, journals can charge insane fees for access, and they want the most prestigious names so that, you know, you feel like you have to pay for access. There's a huge profit motive behind all of it, and that's definitely one of the most corrupting factors of all of it. I mean, a lot of people have brought it up. It's as Naga knows, it's so entrenched. Like these journals are so entrenched. They're so powerful. You know, nature, science, like it's hard to go against them.
Well,
Yeah.
if I'm not mistaken, Mitch hasn't yet published his curve USD white paper. So maybe we can get him to publish this through some sort of new system that we can come up here.
Yeah, there you go.
So he could be the very first paper, and then like it should be maybe something like other people that cite the paper have to like pay royalties to Mitch, whatever the royalties end up being.
Yeah. Okay. Actually, this is one thing that I think about all the time, but I don't know if you could really do it. You should have to put up money as a bounty on anything you publish. So it's like, I'm willing to bet $500 this is true or whatever. So you're incentivized not to bullshit.
Ooh, that could
Like
work.
everyone's CV should be a list of their articles and then the bounty for proving it wrong.
That could work, because then you can actually steal money out of it. Oof. Now you're asking scientists who you know a lot of PhD students like can't afford ramen, but the universities can sponsor their research, right, and sponsor the publication fees.
Yeah. The majority of the grant money should go towards the betting, I think.
And then then you actually have incentive to peer review, because then people will be like, hey, there's $500 sitting there.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I guess that could also become a perverse incentive. I'm not sure.
I think that's a great point, Garrett. Actually, now that you just said it, you know, why isn't there a, you know, crypto archive or some better name, like where when protocols want to publish their white paper, why do I have to like try to search it down with a Google search or like find it through Twitter? Why can't we just have a central resource where people publish their white papers? And, you know, if it's a great idea, get it out there, allow people to comment on it, you know, give feedback. Well, I don't know why we don't have a archive, which if people are not aware, that's like the first big, you know, open source publishing that was presented by Cornell for mostly math and computer science and stuff like that. But it's a completely open source reviewing pre-published service. So it's like the prototypical one. So I don't know why we don't have that for crypto. You know, if we're trying to take it to that academic level, just put it there so anybody can see it. It's a really good point. Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, I think
it's funny that like I was gonna say it's funny that like, you know, the fields that can publish an archive, you know, it's mostly like pure math, physics. The published here is within the community is known to be as good as a journal. Essentially, you know, publishing an archive is essentially seen as the same as publishing in a journal. It's highly regarded.
Yeah, it seems to me that like for better or worse, like all the mind power in crypto goes towards like building out the next like Ponzi schemes, just because there's a lot of money if your Ponzi scheme hits. And unfortunately, like all the kind of like practical applications, like other than like, I mean, you could argue NFTs are a practical application, but those are also a lot of Ponzi schemes. All the like practical stuff seems to take a back seat, probably even more so now that like all the prices are down 95%.
I mean, yeah, I think they take to make something real like that. It just takes a lot more organization and effort, to be honest. And like people are like, or I could get paid pretty quick by just writing a little bit of shitty code, you know. And you know it wins when you're in a pinch.
Just on this, I think if you so in academia we publish usually because that publishing leads to funding, and then once the funding is acquired, this takes quite some time, by the way. Once that funding is acquired, you can finally actually apply all the theories that you've written down in your paper. But in, let's say in DeFi at least, your white paper doesn't really matter as much because you kind of are testing it out. So you're peer reviewing it by building out the application. So then the market kind of decides if it's so it reviews it by basically throwing money at it, and then of course also hacking or exploiting it if there is an issue. So you actually get ruthlessly peer reviewed. It's just not in a traditional academic framework. So I would even say this is a more interesting approach where you are already applying what you've researched, what you're proposing. And then in academia, more often than not, you don't get the opportunity to actually secure the funding for getting your ideas to life.
That's a great point. Yeah, that's absolutely correct. That's a great point, Fiddy.
Yeah, so maybe the main goal in this having decentralized journals and stuff really is just to have a like centralized resource, or like a place where people know where to go to get these type of documents, I guess. And maybe just somewhere people could write comments, so you could say, I don't know if I agree with XYZ, or I think there's an error here.
Yeah, I also think, like you were saying, is that it is as a kind of intermediary between, Fiddy is talking about. You're correct that like the ultimate proof of your ideas is, that creation of the application, and then watching capital make its choice whether they feel the application fills the need, yes or no. But you could imagine an intermediary level where people exactly like Naga, who basically publish a paper and then state that, hey, this is my research, this is the research things I want to explore X, Y, and Z at the end, right? And people can basically donate. He can essentially fundraise based off his work, saying people could say, oh, here's some money, explore these ideas, So you could think about like more, you could kind of crowdfund research individually. This is separate from the implementation of the research to create an application. So you could kind of have like an intermediary, like a crowdfunding web page.
When Naga funder, gosh, we've talked about it a little bit actually. Maybe ultimately that's how things will go with funding grants and stuff on Curve is VE funder style. It's much better actually if you think about it from a decentralization standpoint.
Yeah, I think it's great, but the issue is people don't generally vote for these kind of gauges. So that's what I've observed, because I try to like get people to vote on the Viper one. And well, if you have a setup like Convex where you have to reset or at least re-vote at every epoch, then it becomes a problem, because you kind of like at some point you're just bored, you want to do something else, you want to incentivize the latest rug in town, so US double Ds get some of your attention. So but otherwise it's very hard. So let's say in the case of Viper, the majority of the funding comes from I guess mage funds, most of it, because and he also does it via his V curve. So there you can actually lock your vote for until you have no weight at all. So if you want to do a Viper fundraising, so you kind of want to entice your V curve holders and not convex holders, because there they will not vote for you every week, for example, But on the other hand, you can say that if it is a publicly funded service, having more scrutiny, so more regular scrutiny of what work is being done, also makes sense, right? So let's say you fund something and then they're barely working. Let's say they worked 1 week and then for 3 months they did jack shit. Then of course something like Convex would come in and say, okay, you know what, we just reduce our funding or we just stop our funding. So that also can happen. But I think it's a very nice mechanism to fund whatever at this point, So yeah.
Interesting.
But of course,
So,
it's a gauge that is specific to a specific address, which means that it needs more scrutiny. Which means that you can't just give it out to anybody. You really need to um, almost, let's say there are a lot of people who work, and then many of them need micromanagement. And with these kind of things, you cannot. And with any kind of DAO related stuff, you cannot micromanage, because you really want people who are intrinsically motivated. And so if such a refunder gauge becomes more widespread, then people in the DAO are just gonna like rip the hair off their scalps, because like at some point you're doing too much DAO stuff. It becomes a full-time job, and you're barely getting paid for it. So
Right.
okay, so brainstorming off this, you could set it up then where there's, for example, like a Gnosis safe that was like VE Science funder, and that Gnosis safe itself, or like a organization connected with it, like locked VE curve and just automatically started streaming rewards to that Gnosis safe. And then the Gnosis safe itself could kind of decide with this like regular steady accumulation of curve, point it as they like towards different research projects or something, right? Like that might solve some of the bureaucracy inefficiencies. Maybe I don't know what I'm talking about. Or maybe my Discord just locked up.
You there?